Welcome to the Artful Teaching Podcast. I'm Heather Francis, and I am joined by Stephanie West, who has been working for the BYU ARTS Partnership as an instructional designer for the past year, maybe more. And I'm excited to have her here because we have been partnering together on the design of an online course for teachers called Amplify Native Voices in the Classroom. So Stephanie, say hi and tell us more about you, please.
Hello, and more about me. That's always a hard question. So I am a master's student right now and studying instructional psychology and technology. And that's kind of how I was brought into this project, is that I needed an internship and you guys needed an instructional designer. So it was a match made in heaven.
So can you tell us about the beginning, like where this online course idea came from?
So when I first came into the project, into work with the Native American Curriculum Initiative, you guys had this idea that you wanted an asynchronous course for teachers to help them with teaching the lesson plans that you guys had created already. And so we didn't know, other than that, that's all the structure we had at that point.
Okay, so I think I have to go back a little bit then, because I guess I didn't realize you weren't there from the beginning.
Nope, I wasn't there from the beginning.
Stephanie's been here forever. Obviously, she's so well a part of our team. But with the Native American Curriculum Initiative being developed, it was mostly focused on developing lesson plans in partnership with Utah's sovereign nations and doing arts integrated Native American themed content for those lessons. But then the initiative began to grow and we started to see teachers use our lesson plans that were being developed, and there were a lot of other needs surfacing. So teachers, would keep Brenda and Emily after their presentations and just talk and ask questions. Like there just wasn't enough time in our workshops to give all the information, and teachers wanted more. And teachers were still saying how afraid they were to even address Native American topics in the classroom sometimes because they were afraid of misappropriating or not having the knowledge needed to be culturally sensitive. And so we did a lot of empathy research. We created a persona for administrators. We created a persona for elementary teachers. We created a persona for secondary teachers. We created a persona for Native artists, and we created personas for Native educational directors and community members.
And I think it might be helpful to explain what we mean by persona, because some people might not understand what that means. But with instructional design, when you're trying to empathize with a group of people so that you can really personalize things, you create a persona. It's an individual, not a real individual, but it has different characteristics of that particular group. And then you create additional personas to make sure that you fully captured that entire group. And that way, as you're going through the instructional development process, you're making sure that you're meeting all of the needs that you've already identified in this group, but having that persona makes it real.
And through that process, we came up with a lot of needs. Like administrators need resources to help share accurate content with their teachers, and teachers need a safe environment and a community to ask the hard questions and dialogue the things that they're curious about without fear of reprimand or punishment for mistakes or even bias that they have. And we prioritized all the needs that we saw, and the one that came to the surface was teachers need context and information about the Native groups in Utah, because one, knowledge is power, and we thought that it could help them with their confidence. And two, we saw the lesson plans being implemented, and even with an accurate and authentic lesson plan in their hand, they weren't being implemented in the most accurate and sensitive way. So we saw a gap, we heard a gap, and I'm glad that we introduced you to that need, because you have certainly helped us solve it. So keep going with the story. So you said we invited you in, we knew we wanted to do an online course. So then what happened?
So after you had invited me in, I think you were actually in that empathy phase, development phase. Another element that was identified were principles, culturally responsive principles. And yes, there's lots of information out there about culturally responsive principles, but I think that your particular group, through your experience, had become experts on this based on your experience over the last 3 years. 3 years, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we went through some different activities to go through and identify exactly what those principles were, because I think at this point it had become so natural for the Native American Curriculum Initiative, the people who were working in there, developing these lesson plans. These principles were so natural at that point that we really needed to go through a process to figure out what those principles were, to reflect on it, on the process that you had already gone through, and then pull out these principles. And I think that was incredibly powerful for me to hear the stories, to hear some of the experiences that had already happened and the culturally responsive principles that had come forward. And I think that that's really important as well in our professional development course, because we share our principles, but we also allow space in this for teachers to develop their own principles, because these are the principles that were important for us, but they may be different for a different teacher as they go through this PD course and they experience the principles and ponder and reflect on their own experiences or things that they've seen. So there are other principles that are out there. These are the ones that were important for us.
We tried to illuminate them so that they could be principles that were adopted for addressing any cultural art form or any cultural information in the classroom. And I love what you said. I just want to summarize, like, our team developed these principles out of practice. So it's like a theory that has come out of real practice, creating authentic and culturally responsible resources that then becomes the bridge to help teachers use their own agency and autonomy to continue that journey in their own way, in their own style, taking our theory and then putting it into practice for themselves, and acknowledging that as a practicing teacher, teachers can develop their own ideas about what it means to be culturally responsive as well.
Yeah. I think too, when you think about that practice and then the development of the theory or principles from that, I think that one other element as we were thinking about this professional development course that kept coming to me is this importance of empathy. And I think that as I consider that and think about what you're talking about right now, that empathy is, I think, a very natural state or a natural feeling for many teachers, because many teachers join or become teachers because they are empathetic. They want to help learners. They want to help students. And so they have this natural empathy that comes from that. And really what we're trying to do with this course is we were identifying it as an important element as well of cultural responsiveness, but it's a slightly different context. And so that's why it brought out slightly different principles.
Yeah. And you can listen to another episode on the principles or, take our course because we go over them there too. Actually, I think we give them the podcast episode as well there.
We do.
Yeah. Okay.
But definitely take the course.
Yeah. All right, Stephanie. So let's tell our listeners what they can expect to find in the course.
Okay, so the course is really made up of 6 modules with an additional module at the very beginning that is just an introduction to the overall course itself. But the first module is honoring personal identity and culture. And we really felt as we continue to explore cultural responsiveness and the development of empathy that occurs with cultural responsiveness, the importance of first knowing your own culture and having reflected on that before you can actually approach another person's culture, because without having that knowledge yourself of your own personal culture, it's very hard to then understand where someone else is coming from.
Yeah, if I honor my culture, then I can understand why other people want to have their culture honored too.
Yeah.
The next module is called Studying the History of U.S. Tribal Relations. And this is a fun one. Stephanie, tell them about it.
These next 2 modules are probably the ones that I love all of it, but studying the history of U.S. tribal relations, when we were thinking about the knowledge that's important for teachers to have about Native topics, we realized that it was really important, one, that it be very connected to land was one part of it, but also that we started with this broad picture and then narrowed in on very specific information. So it starts with this broad view of U.S. tribal relations, and there's a piece in that was developed and was so impactful for me. I took a professional development course last summer, so a year ago, from the University of Utah, and Dean Cronk-Warner and Connor Warner were the teachers of this course. And Dean Cronk-Warner is a native of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of the Chippewa. And she is also the dean of the law school and has done a lot of work with Native topics in legal areas. And she taught a 1.5-hour presentation on this topic of U.S. tribal relations through history, like the history of U.S. tribal relations. And it was so impactful for me because it was very clear. It was very balanced. Sometimes you'll get one particular bias or another when it comes to historical perspectives on Native relations, but her presentation was so incredibly well-balanced, unbiased, and it was just very clear. And I thought, oh, I wish we could have this kind of information, but it was an hour and a half long, and we only have one credit, which is like 15 hours worth of work. And so I took the information and condensed it down into like about a 12 or 13 minute video transcript and sent it to her. And I said, would you mind if we took this and created a video out of this, an educational video? And she gave us some feedback on it, on the wording that we had, and said that would be fine. And so we're in the process of developing that still. But I'm really excited about that particular portion of it. And so the next module after that is titled Bringing Utah Native Nations into the Present. And so once we've seen this big, broad view of U.S. tribal history, then we come in specifically to Utah. And this was a really important part when we were talking, when members of the Native American Curriculum Initiative have talked with tribal groups here in Utah and asked them, what do you want people to know about you? A message that we hear over and over again is, we're still here. And so we wanted to be able to make that connection between history and the present. And we really brainstormed, how can we do that? And two things kind of came out of that brainstorm. One was this importance of being able to see the historical ancestral lands and how that has changed to current modern day reservations. And then also the specific experience and the unique stories that are in each of our 8 federally recognized nations here in Utah. And so we did that in this module through an interactive timeline, and we worked directly with the Native groups here in Utah to develop that. Not all of our timelines are finished yet, because this is very specific information for these Native groups, and so we've partnered with them, just like we have with the lesson plans, to create their content. And so this is their history and their present from their perspective. And anything that they don't want put into the timeline, we don't put in. And so we've worked hand in hand with them to create this. And then it goes through another tribal approval process, just like our lesson plans. So the information that is on these timelines is from a Native perspective, and it's accurate because it's come from these groups. And you know that the information is tribal approved, because it will have their tribal seal on it. So at this point, because we have not been able to go through the tribal approval process or completed all of the timelines, not all of the timelines are in there yet, and we hope that someday we will have all those timelines. But until we have that tribal approval and have gone through this process, we will not share this information, because it is very personal and specific to each of these tribal groups.
Yep, that's a great example of 2 of our principles. We are not putting all the timelines in until they're approved, which is an example of allowing the authentic time for things to grow. We move at the pace that we can, and we move at the pace that the tribes want us to. And then also accepting the no gracefully, and really, really letting them own how their story is told, because it is their story. So great. The next module is called Evaluating Resources for Accuracy and Authenticity. I think teachers are going to eat this section up, because it has a video series and a decision-based learning module that helps a teacher go through the decision of, do I want to use this resource in my classroom? Is it culturally appropriate? Is it culturally responsible? And am I going to be honoring Native experiences past and present with this resource? A decision-based learning model is a pedagogy that organizes instruction around the decisions that an expert has to make in order to solve a problem. And a lot of teachers find it a problem to know what is culturally appropriate to use in their classroom. And you don't always have a Brenda be all in your pocket to ask. And Brenda wouldn't even tell you yay or nay. She's going to let you make your own choice. So this pedagogy and tool is actually there to help teachers make choices for themselves confidently. It's a process for making decisions. So it's got some critical thinking, and we put it inside of a discussion board. So there's some collaboration, so you can have your thoughts validated or pushed upon, or read new insight that you hadn't thought of before. And there's a lot of interrelated decisions. And so it's pretty systematic. Okay, so one of the questions teachers have to ask in order to know if they want to use the resource in their classroom is the creator and author of this resource credible? What's their background? They also have to ask themselves, how do I know that the information or the content in this resource is accurate? And they also have to ask themselves if the resource provides tribe-specific representation, because culturally appropriate resources do that. And resources that aren't as sensitive or appropriate homogenize Native groups. Another question you have to ask yourself is, does the resource bring Native Americans into the present? This is what good resources do. There's also great resources that are about the past and the history, but if that's all you ever do is think about Native Americans as something in the past, then that's stereotypical. Teachers also will want to ask themselves if any of the references to traditional ceremonies or deity are respectful and appropriate in the resource, and if the resource encourages copying or replicating the Native American traditions and symbols or objects in an inappropriate way. And those two questions, so every question that I just asked has a presentation that goes through some examples of how people make these choices. And especially those last two questions, I think teachers are going to want to see examples, because you're going to see a lot of yes and no kind of answers. And then also some ambiguity. Teachers have to wrestle with these questions themselves and in the end answer yay or nay, or maybe with revisions, on the resources that we've presented in the course for discussion.
I think that that's the real power of the DBL model, the decision-based learning model, is that it gives you lots of examples, lots of direction for how to find the answers that you're looking for. But in the end, you make the decision. We don't tell you what decision you're supposed to be making, because we're not going to be there. And also because sometimes it's very context specific. And sometimes there are, like you said, there's ambiguity or gray areas. And we want teachers to be as confident as possible, but we also don't know the answers. We're still learning ourselves. And I think that's really important for teachers as they approach this professional development course, that they recognize that these are things that we're learning ourselves, that we have learned over the last few years, but we're also learning ourselves. Even Brenda says that she says, I've made mistakes. And that's another one of our guiding principles, is that I can't remember the specific wording of it.
We assume goodwill and learn from our mistakes.
Yeah. And I think both of those are really important. And I think that's part of what makes it very powerful. The guiding principles is that there is room for growth.
Yes. And there's a lot of room for growth in this course, and there's room for making mistakes. It's supposed to be a safe place for teachers, so we hope we've built it that way. The next two modules, the second to last one is applying the NACI way. This is where we really go into depth into those guiding principles, and we let teachers record a video of themselves talking about either a story where they saw the principles implemented or a time when the principles maybe could have been implemented. We're using an Indigenous pedagogy of telling stories, and they call it talking story in many different Indigenous communities across the globe. But we think it's great to hear teachers' stories, and teachers enjoy talking to one another. So even though it's an asynchronous course, having a Padlet full of different teacher stories can help add to that safe environment for learning.
So talking about these Indigenous pedagogies is that we realized early on that our vision for the Native American Curriculum Initiative is amplifying Native voices, which is part of why this is titled Amplify Native Voices in the Classroom. But for us to do that, we really also needed to model that. And whenever possible, we want Native individuals to be presenting the information that is their cultural information. Whenever that's possible, we want to be doing that. And we want to be using these Indigenous pedagogies, these ways of learning that are very embedded within the Native culture. And we may have some of that, but they're not as central, I think, to some of our teaching and our pedagogies that we have. And so at the very beginning, our very first module, I just wanted to point out, because we didn't talk about this, is that entire module was created by Alan Groves, who is a Native artist. He's also the head of the...
He's one of the leaders of the Turtle Island Art Collective.
Yeah, and he's also an educator in the Alpine School District.
And you can hear an interview with him in our last episode if you missed it.
And he's an excellent educator, very good, incredible artist. And so what the other piece that we tried to do throughout this professional development course is to embed things in the arts whenever possible, because we feel that arts are a culturally responsive tool that can be used to teach and to connect people and to especially address cultural topics that can sometimes be tricky to address in other ways. But through the arts, it gives us a language that often surpasses the languages that we have.
Mm-hmm. Well said. The last module is called Applying Principles of Culturally Responsive Teaching to Professional Practice, and this is the final project where teachers get to create or revise a lesson plan and write their reflection on what they've learned in the course.
Yeah, so that's really the crux of the course. So all of the preceding modules are really to build up to this final project, which is the actual application. And hopefully by this point, teachers are really feeling confident. And if they're not, they can, through practice, hopefully develop that confidence.
Yeah. And like we said, it's a 1-credit course. We'll be offering USBE credit and hopefully some BYU credit as well. But 1 credit usually means 15 hours of instruction. And so there's going to be more resources and links and things to explore than the 15 hours. And so even if a teacher's not feeling confident at the end, they'll have access to a lot of resources to get the information they need to feel confident. And they'll have access to the facilitators of the course. Right now during beta testing and the first few cycles, that will be Stephanie and I.
Yes.
So we'd love to work with you. Stephanie, who is this course for? Who can sign up?
That's a great question. So our target has been K-12 teachers. However, mostly K-6 teachers is the biggest focus. We've also had some interest from even higher education has considered this as being a resource for them. So we feel like the principles that are taught in here have great application not only for Native cultures, but for other cultures, and have great application outside of even education. I feel like just having gone through this process, I have learned so much, and I think it has impacted me personally in helping me navigate even relationships in my life, because culturally responsive principles are really human-centered principles.
Mm-hmm. I love hearing that, Stephanie. It's all about relationships. We have to learn to be in relationship with one another and to connect with each other. And yeah, there's a lot of work to do with that. So administrators, district administrators, school administrators, community organizers, they are also invited. You can register for this course June 7th. That is the beginning of Arts Express, our summer conference for elementary teachers. We're actually going to have a lot of our Native American presenters and partners and artists there presenting, so we hope you can join us. You can register on our website. We'll put the link in the show notes. But that is when we are launching the course and recruiting our first cohort to complete the course. The course is only a 15-hour course, but you have a year to complete it. We, of course, will always encourage that it be completed in 2 to 3 months so that you don't have to go back and remember, what was in a previous module. But you can register on USBE. You can send us an email. We'll put a link in the show notes if you want to just get on the email ahead of time. We have our NACI mailing list, so if you're not on that mailing list, we'll put the link in show notes. But there's lots of ways to get in touch with us and to register for this online course. And if you're interested at all, we really hope that you'll come and join our discussion.
We really do hope teachers will come and be part of this. And there have been a few phrases that have come out, like Amplify Native Voices has come out through this process. Another phrase I think that has come out a couple of different times is this "take the journey" phrase. And I think that it's such a powerful phrase because it exemplifies what we're all trying to do here, is that this is a journey. There's not really a beginning or an end, but it's just a journey that continues. So you come from where you are, take this in, and then continue on. So I guess that's our invitation to you. Come take the journey with us.
Yes, so well said. That's exactly what it is. We don't want this promotion of our course to be even like a marketing thing. We're not selling it. It's it's free for teachers to do. We just want teachers to have access if they are in need. And if you don't have time for a full course, you don't need the credits, we have so many other resources for you, and they're all free. And we really want to help teachers along on their journey of culturally responsive teaching and also just their artful journey of life. So thank you for joining us here on the Artful Teaching Podcast, and we hope to see you at Arts Express this summer or in our online course. Bye.
Artful Teaching is made possible by the BYU ARTS Partnership and the McKay School of Education.
Thanks to James Houston for editing this podcast. Music was generously provided by Connor Chi, a Navajo Diné composer and performer.
And special thanks to all of the teachers who are changing lives every day while serving in schools.
If you like what you heard, please leave us a review. You can find all the show notes for this episode and more resources at advancingartsleadership.com.
And don't forget to check out our tribe-approved lesson plans on the website as well.
I'm Heather Francis.
And I'm Callie Phlox.
And I'm Brenda Bial.
Wishing you an artful journey.